Okay, so good evening. Today's class is particularly regarding the design principles that we have into impact. So anything that you see or any composition which is available. So how does this design principles really do impact them? What we actually see, and finally how we can derive. So actually, whenever we see a composition, the first and the foremost important thing that we will have to keep in mind is what does it signify, or specifically if we are talking about any sort of design principle, then we will have to also understand particularly there are some elements which are into that design, and hence how to categorize a design from one another. So we need to classify a particular set of a design, that okay, this is how it looks and this is what it is, in comparison with the other one which is also available in a different format, or might be the composition is completely different from the one that we are talking about. So in these terms, when we talk about design, or when we look at any particular, this design principles are not only limited to only designs or only structures or something like that. This has quite a lot of impact in our daily life as well, starting from the poster that you see of in a movie, from to the logo that you see in McDonald's or any of the famous brands, followed by your interiors of any structure to the exterior, and also most importantly in natural life. So we human beings have to classify any of these things, right? And to make the other people understand when we talk about something, or when, so for example, if we have to tell differentiate apple from orange, then we will have to classify them in with some aspects or some elements, and some prospects which will bring them into impact. So how we classify them differently is all what we are talking. Okay, just give me a second. Just check the camera settings. Give me, okay, yeah. Now I guess, am I visible to you properly?
Yes, sir.
Okay, fine. So as I was talking about, this design principles. So we have discussed regarding balance, and we tried to understand in a very simple format what is this balance all about, what we do have in it. So the very first thing when we talk about balance comes to our mind is balance means kind of stable. Anything before symmetrical, asymmetrical, or radial balance, if someone just tells you the simple word balance, the basic concept of the basic idea that is going to come to your mind is that okay, the thing is quite stable. So that's what we are talking about here. The very first thing, or the very first aspect of balance which comes over here, is your symmetrical balance. So what is the symmetrical balance we need to understand? So symmetrical balance is nothing but a composition which is there with you. For example, over here you are seeing some logo, some particularly if I talk about some posters and all, but it can be anything in a wider aspect, which we will look into in the upcoming compositions which we have over here. You will have a composition, you will draw an axis, an imaginary axis out in your mind, can be horizontal, can be vertical, and the two sides of the composition, the two sides of the axis will be having the same or equal weightage. So over here what you see, for example, see this particular logo over here in Titanic. Okay, it is not a mirror image, but the balance is similar. So how can you tell me how the balance could have been different from symmetrical balance? How could we have made this an asymmetrical balance, this Titanic poster? Any idea?
So I didn't get you.
So this symmetrical Titanic picture which we see over here, Titanic poster, this is in symmetrical balance. I hope you're able to understand that. How is it in symmetrical balance in respect with the
Yes,
axis?
sir. Yeah.
So how from symmetrical balance could we have switched it to asymmetrical balance? By adding something or by subtracting something over here?
So
Hmm.
if both the characters were, if they were on one, on one side, then it would have been
That could have been
asymmetrical.
something, but see, I'm talking about in respect with this composition, what it could have been. Now, that doesn't really signify the what you have told is like, kind of definitely making sense, changing the weightage of the composition. But in respect with this particular, poster which we are talking about, it would have not made that amounts of sense. But in keeping this poster same, what we could have changed is, let's assume the left side of the deck, on the ship's deck, left side is filled with a lot of people who are looking like, towards the water or something like that, whereas the right hand side is completely empty. Then and there it will be an asymmetrical balance. So I hope I'm able to convey the message, like, of, or the idea of symmetrical and asymmetrical balance.
Yes, sir.
Okay, fine. So let's move ahead to the next part. Okay. So these are some of the terminologies that we will have to keep in mind. What is symmetrical balance? Formal, uniform, soothing, organized, stability. Can be monotonous. Composition look highly balanced. Logo in printing and in other uses becomes a lot easier. Can be used from either side. Repetitive elements makes it easier in architecture. Ease of balance. Best balance looks in symmetrical balance. Then okay, these are some of the exam, like in respect with the examples, what they have, what are the design principles that they have is being mentioned over here. The Time magazine is having symmetrical balance followed by emphasis, high contrast. Now the below, below this top ones are design principle, below them these things, line, shape, topography, form, these are visual principles, what you can see visually, what you can see. So specifically speaking, in NATA examination also you will get questions related to visual principles itself, and they will ask you what are the visual principles that you can see in this composition. Now, in fact, see, every design principle is a visual principle because we see them visually and then we categorize them or segregate them in different aspects. But apart from this set of design principles which are quite specified, there are another set of or there are another sort of visually visual principles that on basis of which we can describe the whole composition. Certain other things that we need to look into. So this is what we totally call as a set of visual principle from which there are certain set of laws or something like that you can tell. These set are known as the design principles. Okay, so we will move on. We will not go in detail what each of these compositions are having over here because we have not already gone through the other design principles. We can come back once we are done and then we might have a better idea of all these things. So moving on to some of the other best examples in structures in terms of your symmetrical balance. The first one is the vertical axis running through, and hence it is kind of quite mirror image that you can see. In the Petronas Twin Tower, weightage of the picture remains the same, and your Taj Mahal in Agra remains the same. White House, this house, particular house. So all of these are having equal weightage, but they are geometrically also symmetric. Hence, it looks kind of a mirror image only. Okay, so hardly there is any difference since it is kind like right now. If I talk about mirror image in the White House, then the left hand side tree should have been similar to the right hand side tree. That is not possible, but since they are geometrically even and geometrically the structure has been made symmetric, hence it quite looks like a mirror image, but not exactly. Let's move on. So again, yeah, you are having a doubt, please tell.
No, sir.
Again, these set of things have been described over here with the other stuff and all. We will look into them again once we are done with the whole set of design principles. Okay, now in terms of pictures or compositions, we are having some few compositions over here, which again describes the exact symmetrical balance which we were talking about. So if we are having access over here vertically, the weightage of the picture, the number of people who are standing on both the sides along with the whole set of composition looks the same. Similarly for the statue, similarly for the other compositions as well. Okay. So for example, in this picture, okay, what is the name of this composition?
The Last Supper.
Yeah, made by? Okay, I will tell you the Last Supper
I
made.
know the name. I can't remember.
Huh? You told the
I,
name?
no, I knew it. I can't remember.
Okay, it is Leonardo da Vinci. Okay.
Yes.
So that is one, and there is another one that is Jan van Eyck. The name of the composition is Kent Altarpiece. Okay, so some of the not only them, the other two are also the left hand side bottom was is another composition. Right hand side is your this thing, the statue. So I guess till now we have quite understood what are all these things working into and how symmetrical balance has been perceived over here. Now let's look into some examples of interior design. How in the interior of a house the symmetrical balance is being perceived. Here are some of the beautiful examples, like which will really classify or which will really explain you quite in a good way that how you can obtain symmetrical balance inside of a structure. So you see, particularly any of these compositions is maintaining quite a similar format. Now let's assume on this left hand side bottom, okay, this white colored chair, white colored table, this beautiful light. Can you see my cursor?
Yes, sir.
So this composition, this could have been made asymmetrical just by simply changing the color of these two chairs on the left hand side or might be on the right hand side. If we have changed it into dark red, let's assume, or dark purple, something dark, then automatically the symmetrical composition would have been asymmetric. So we need to remember, always it's not the shapes, always it's not the colors. It's a combination of all the things that working together. We need to understand when what is taking or becoming into impact, and hence making it symmetrical or asymmetrical. Right. Now these are some of the best examples in nature. What can be there also, how it can be symmetrical or asymmetrically composed. Moving on to here, asymmetrical balance now. So what can we see in asymmetrical balanced composition? So when we talk about asymmetrically balanced composition, see these are some of the logos which I have put into over here. You can see Facebook, YouTube, Nike, then your Apple logo. This is a very old logo of Apple, the very initial days what they used. There is another one which dates back to the very first one, but that is kind of quite complex, and a lot of things has been included over there. Then there is Nintendo Switch, there is Gemis, there is Pepsi. Everything what you see over here is asymmetrical. This YouTube is asymmetrical due to this tube having a heavyweight background with the red, hence making it look bulkier, and the U looking like kind of with the white background, it looks kind of lightweight. Similarly for the other logos as well, somehow or the other they are all asymmetrically balanced. Any doubts?
Sir, if the Titanic poster was there, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if the thickness of the words was the letters on either side, if that was different, then would that also be
No, no.
asymmetrical?
Letters doesn't signify anything. Yeah, the thing could have been different. For example, if the left hand side is written in small letters, right hand side is written in dark, bold capital letters. Hence, changing the weightage of the picture. But letters being different doesn't signify anything. So
No, sir.
yeah,
I'm saying the border of the letters, if that was thicker,
you're telling the
when
fonts would
we,
have been different, right?
yeah.
Yeah, so if the fonts would have been different, definitely it would have been asymmetrical, depending upon what is the change that we are seeing. Is it a very major change or is it a very minute change which we even cannot notice? Depending upon that, it would have been symmetrical or asymmetrical.
Okay, sir.
So looking into asymmetrical balanced, high contrast in terms of shape, forms, elements of design, sense of freedom, adventure, interesting, non-monotonous, smart, dynamic, rebellious, irregularity, organic, engineered, natural shapes and placement. One needs to be very cautious and highly perceptive while developing asymmetrical balance. Risky and difficult to pull out, difficult to achieve rhythm. So these are the things that we need to keep in mind while talking about asymmetrical balance. These are some of the aspects which we see in terms of structures, how a symmetrical balance has been placed into impact. For example, if you just look at the top composition, all the saucer kind of, like, this whole setting has been made with, like, saucer kind of dishes. So if you just look at those dish shaped structures, the thing which you will see that they are kind of looking to you as they might fall off. So they are not that static which a normal, like, building will look to you. So hence this is asymmetrical. When we come to this left hand side bottom picture, this is asymmetrical in terms of the shape, how one side is taller, one side is shorter. When we look at this house, it is asymmetrical in terms of the color as well as the, like, height. When we look in terms of this right hand side corner picture, it is again asymmetrical in terms of the heights of the building and the different rhythms that has been used. So everything is asymmetrical, but there are different aspects which we are looking into while, like, categorizing it as asymmetrical. So this you need to understand. This any, like, any of these students needs to understand how to process with this and how to put these aspects into place when you are looking at a different composition, and categorize it in symmetrical, asymmetrical, or whatever it is, whatever design principle you are supposed to categorize it depending upon the question which is given to you. Moving ahead, okay, these are the names. Please make sure nothing is important is required over here other than understanding how it is asymmetrical, and these things are very important: name of the structure and the architect who has built it. Similarly, when it's a composition, name of the composition, who is the painter, or these particular aspects, just try to remember and try to. So for example, when I talk about Taj Mahal, you don't forget it because that is kind of stuck in your mind. So similarly, this thing also should get stuck in your mind when, like, repeatedly seeing that particular composition. For example, right now, if I talk about, let's assume Eiffel Tower, you have not seen Eiffel Tower recently, right? So, but as soon as I tell Eiffel Tower, the particular composition or the particular structure comes to your mind, because once or the either you have seen it, might be in movies, and this is kind of a repetitive thing which you have gone through your unconscious mind, like, this thing has, sorry, subconscious mind, this thing has gone through several times, might be in movies, might be in cartoons, might be somewhere or the either. So wherein in respect, these compositions are not that famous, but still, once you go through, once you try to remember, okay, what is this? For example, the top one is the museum, National Museum in Qatar. Who is the architect? When you go through these things will get stuck to your mind and you will never forget it. Okay. Are you getting it, Sarah? Like, I guess there is no issues with that.
I'm getting it, sir.
Yeah. For example, this particular composition, as soon as you see it, or as soon as you see something similar to this, very first thing which should come to your mind, okay, this is the Walt Disney Concert Hall in Los Angeles, California, built by Frank Gehry. Okay, this is again a very good example of asymmetrical balance, and, like, it is, this asymmetrical balance is being ported in terms of the form, shape, texture, everything is different. Like, what, when we look into this particular shape, there is different form, there is different color, and, like, color in terms of, for example, this shape is shiny, this place is having glass, hence, like, due to the reflection and all, it is giving a different aspect. In terms of texture, both structures are different. In terms of line, structures are different. Hence, this is like, asymmetrically balanced in aspect of almost every element that we can look into. Okay, now these are some of the composition which again talks about asymmetrical balance. For example, this particular composition, central one top, this particular composition, what is the name? Do you know anyhow? Name of this composition? Any idea?
I'm not sure. Something.
Okay. Yeah, tell something.
No, sir. I'm not sure.
This is the Starry Night, built by like, Vincent Van Gogh. Okay. Next one is very simple. The Room. Now this one you will very much remember whenever you see this. See, this is how our mind works. For example, this name and this particular composition has a very good relation. So room is the room. So whenever you see this, next time whenever someone shows you this picture, you will eventually remember it. Anyhow, you're never going to forget it. I can assure you 100%. Similarly, other compositions also you'll have to try to remember. For example, the Starry Night also is kind of quite easy to remember. These two pictures side by side are built by the same person, Vincent Van Gogh, Starry Night and the Room. And everywhere, any of these compositions where you feel that asymmetrically, how it is asymmetrically balanced, I am not pretty much clarified on that part.
So the first one on the top. Yeah.
First one, how it is asymmetrically balanced. See, it is asymmetrically balanced in terms of if we are having a central vertical axis over here. So the placement of these two structures, one is on the top side, one is on the bottom side. We'll have to understand these things in this way. Hence, it is asymmetrically balanced. We are looking at it, towards it in this aspect. For example, how this lady on the right hand side, she has formed a shape, the same it's not exactly the same, but might be something similar or some sort of structure this other lady has formed on the left hand side, like standing itself, then it was symmetrically balanced. Okay. So
Okay, sir.
we move on to the next composition. Okay, this is again a structure known as the sprouts built by Vivor Sagoni. So this is again a structural element, symmetrically balanced. Moving on to some of the interiors. See now over here in the interiors, the very first picture is a very good example of the application of what I just exactly told while explaining you symmetrically balanced, that how symmetrical balance could have been transferred into a symmetrical balance. This color of the sofa on the left hand side has been changed. Right hand side, everything might be the shapes are almost similar. Right hand side, everything is lighter. Like, even the light is coming from the right hand side. Window is also placed over here. Hence, the weightage
Yes,
of
sir.
the picture on the right hand side becomes less heavier. Left hand side becomes more looks more heavier, inclusive of these particulars like metal structures also bulkier. This particular chair over here makes it more bulkier. Hence, it is an asymmetrical composition. Similar kind of things goes with all the other structures over here. This photo frame, so similarly, how this particular composition was asymmetrical, two structures becoming at two corners. Similarly, this particular left hand side bottom composition is also with the photo frame being in one corner, this particular table being in one corner, making it look asymmetrical. Same similar kind of things with goes with these other two structures as well. We move on to some of the other things which looks pretty much asymmetrical and clearly signifies the work of asymmetrical balance. The over here some of the pictures, like this is a poster of a movie. These are some of the magazine covers and all, clearly signifies how these things are asymmetrically balanced. Okay. Now, few of the things in nature, which like some examples from nature, I must tell, which shows some sort of asymmetrical balance. Okay, this particular composition, which is given over here in this PDF, don't consider it as like it is asymmetrically balanced if you have a vertical line over here, but it is more towards the side of radial balance. Okay, I will just tell quickly what is radial balance. It is not that important for NATA because we have never seen radial balance quite coming up in the past 3 years or so, but still I will consider it more towards radial balance in comparison with asymmetrical balance. Okay, let's quickly move on to radial balance. So okay, you understood with these compositions, right, how they are asymmetrically balanced? Any
So that lake one,
lake one,
how
yeah,
is that?
that's what I was looking for. Lake one, you should I also felt you should have asked. So see, lake one, how it is asymmetrically balanced. It is quite a good concept, and these are the things. So this is the very first time when I'm explaining to you, or like while I'm explaining to any of the other students. This is the explanation I'm giving them. But after this, once you get these concepts, you need to imply this or implement this in any of the further compositions that you see. So the lake one, the difference is if the stones would have not been there. Okay, moreover these larger stones which are pretty much closer to you, making the surface look bulkier in comparison with the top one. If the stones would not have been there, it's a clear reflection of the top, like in the water. Or might be there are some stones but a very far distance, not these things at all. So these bulkness, like due to the stones wouldn't have been there, this would have been a symmetrical composition. So simply an addition of a simple object or a subtraction of a simple object can result in symmetrical or asymmetrical composition. Clear?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now this is one of the biggest examples of asymmetrical balance. That is the world map. Everything is asymmetrically balanced. There is no or nothing at all which is symmetrically balanced. Okay. Now we have something over here as radial balance as well, which we quickly need to look at. So what is radial balance? See, radial balance is nothing but however you draw a axis, okay, in that particular composition. It might be diagonal, vertical. So simply the concept is radial balance moves around a point. If everything looks similar around a point, then it is radially balanced. So however you draw an axis through that point, everything on both the sides of the axis will look similar. Understood? Like, I guess it is you are getting it what I'm trying to convey. So all these
Yes,
logos,
sir.
however the axis is running through the central point, like, it will look similar on both the sides of the axis. We will try to look into some examples of radial balance. Okay, before that, elements place and move the following radius. Focus, emphasis comes in the center, calm and soothing. It can be used in any direction. Centralized placement, sense of motion. Sense of motion, highly rhythmic, looks decorative, ornamented because of radial use of elements. A lot of use in logo and architecture. Some of the greatest examples of radial balance is over here, what you can see. So the right hand side top composition which you can see, this is something which is coming up from the ancient architectural styles and all. Most probably from you can expect from the Roman architecture and all, where the tinted glass has been started to use. So for example, this right hand side bottom one, which you can see everything is revolving around the central point. Everything looks similar around that central point, however you draw an axis. This is how these all things are radially balanced. Mostly spiral things are always kind of radially balanced. So for example, the staircase, this dome. So remember, every radial balance is also in symmetrically balanced composition, but not all symmetrically balanced compositions are radially balanced. I hope you get it. So, however, you draw an axis, same on both the sides. Now, coming to the or speaking about the terminology of symmetrical balance, this fact also comes true. When you draw axis, similar on both sides. So, the radial balance is however you draw axis. Symmetrical balance is on a particular axis, it should be same. So, every radial balance which is there is also a symmetrically balanced composition. Clear?
Yes, sir.
Right. These are some of the other examples. These are some of the things in nature which we can see sometimes, or which we eventually see. Okay, now we will move into emphasis, or the next part which we will start will be emphasis. So this is all for this particular class. I'll stop the class recording over here. That's all. Just give me a second.